It really helps in this case because the property across the street is so well maintained. It makes a really nice picture.
Right, yeah, you look at, I'll pull this up, just, I think we're not officially started, but how was the tour on?
We had a really good day. We had a really good day. Michael joined us down at the Historic Society, so it was really nice. They juiced up about the Argo Mill and we had spent probably a good hour, I think, with the Historic Society, with Jan and with Linda and Michael, and then we came up. Unfortunately, we got a little bit of rain, so I think our scavenger hunt and look about town got cut a little bit short, but not too bad. Everybody got their assignments in and did their little assessment.
Well, the rain turned out better than it was supposed to because the original forecast was rain like 9 until 3.
Yes. Yeah, it was a really good day. It was a really good day, so appreciate it. And you'll see at least some of us again.
That's good. Right. Lisa, of course, was coming. I don't know if she's like coming from job or something.
It's not coming from a job. Quit that.
I don't know if we want to just wait a little while and chat or.
I think chat and see.
Sure.
I
And,
didn't hear her say she's not coming. So.
right, well, she emailed me, the first thing that she had brought, she had emailed me yesterday, and I responded like an hour ago, which was bad of me, but she, I think, I'll let her speak to it, but was saying that.
Do you guys mind if I eat my dinner?
She had mentioned an interest in possibly passing on the chair position to someone new because she's done it for 3 years. So we wouldn't elect a new chair for a few months yet. That's in March. But
Oh, I'm so sorry. My apologies all. I hope you started without me.
No.
Oh,
it's only been a couple of minutes. We were talking, actually, Mike had put together this kind of architectural style sheet.
I saw that.
Which I think is really, would be a good thing to put together for every.
Every architectural
I know where the house is.
Yeah, if you walked over to that window, you'd see it right away. Yeah, because, it kind of gets to the whole point of like encouraging people to build appropriately or do appropriate additions and things like that. I think quite well.
The idea is you could sort of even actually put it online, so it's the first thing they see when they look up an address.
Yeah, and that would be beneficial because to get to the point of like the buffer district zone, which you mentioned, like in the historic district right now, we have only a few residences, but in the buffer zone, it's majority of residences, and so.
Yeah, that's why I started with that particular one because it was a house
Right.
in terms of there's only 4 commercial types in the historic district, so that's pretty quick to do, but by doing a house first, and I think there's like, if you include the area within 3 blocks of the historic district, there's like maybe 9 in this style.
Well, and I think you're gonna see all the styles of the go there. All right, I'm going to, since we are at quorum at 6:07, I'm gonna declare this work session in session. I know Shannon is not gonna be here. Did we hear from?
Erica is unwell today, so she said she didn't want to pass on any.
We appreciate that.
germs.
If you're up there, Erica, we appreciate it.
Yes, I didn't have anyone join by Zoom, but I think she got on YouTube or
And
something.
is
Clark, I had not heard from, but
okay.
I also had not specifically reached out to them.
And I don't know.
He was traveling because he had mentioned about maybe joining us, but he was just starting a trip, so.
So he may still be away.
That's okay. Did you send out that agenda to just me or to everybody?
I ended up just putting the whole agenda on
Okay.
here for tonight.
I got a full packet, I think.
Yes, and Lisa had wanted to add the item, which I teased at the very start about potentially having a new chair next year.
Yes, I've been chair for 3 years.
I'm doing a good job.
No, I'm not, I don't want to leave because I have issues. I just think that new blood is better for the commission. I had three goals when I took over being chair. The first was to update our guidelines, like to make them realistic, and it took us a while, but we did it. The second was to get an official sites and facilities going, which we also did. And the third, which I think there is momentum, I knew this was a long-term goal, was to turn our town into a group of local historic districts. And I think there is not only interest within the community, but there is interest on the board itself.
Right,
So I
well,
feel like I have reached 2.5 of my goals. And we have such a depth of talent on this board that I think it's just, it's time.
Mm.
You know, it's time for somebody else. Michael has been an excellent chair, been vice chair with me, and I just think it's time for me personally. So that is something for you all to think about. You said it's March that,
yeah, that's when we would normally appoint a new, there, March or as soon thereafter that we have a meeting.
so by March, if you are interested to throw your hat in the ring, you know, let's talk about it.
Look at me, my hat ain't going nowhere.
I know your hat is not anywhere, your hat's not even in the room. But I think, you know, I feel, I wouldn't make this suggestion or move, but I feel like I can, you know, my control freak self can safely say that the board is in good hands. You know, I have very strong feelings about how I want our town to continue on, and I don't think that our board is in, you know, massive disagreement with that. So please keep that in your thoughts about whether you'd like it. It's not really that hard.
Right,
So are you planning on continuing until March, or you want to do?
Oh, I'll continue till March, but, and I would like to stay on the board. I don't want to leave the board. I just don't want to be the chair anymore. Because like I said, I think if you shake it up every 3 or 4 years, that's healthier for the board.
Mm.
You know,
sure, right, well, and on your third goal of local districts, I think next meeting, we may have, I've been chatting with a woman on Virginia who wants to potentially designate. And
Yes.
I think, you know, kind of this fourth item on the agenda, I wanted to bring up before we had someone come in and say like, hey, I want to do this and designate my home, just to kind of get to what do we want them to provide and like what level of survey is needed, those sorts of things. But I think at the next meeting, I'd like to have her as a work session item to kind of come in and just talk about it. Because it's a little different than when we like designated the hot springs, because they had the CPI helping them through it and all that. It was like very well organized, but in this case.
well, I want to
it's
make sure
local
her
window.
neighbors are happy too, because there's nothing worse than, you know, 4 or 5 neighbors run an agenda through, and then like 4 or 5 other neighbors are absolutely miserable.
Right,
But
but
did she just wanna designate her house?
yeah, it would,
or-
I think as a starting point, she would just want to consider doing it for just her property.
Okay,
And so then, and
That's a start,
she's
though.
just outside that like historic,
the
like
buffer
from-
zone.
well, she's outside she's just behind in the vicinity of the Habitat Project. So she's kind of just outside of the like.
What's her,
On Virginia or on Wall Street?
On Virginia.
what's her address?
It's 16, it's at the end of the street, 1616. It's like that purple or.
Would
It
this be
is-
Lily?
Actually, I think it's 1616 Wall, I'm sorry. So it is Wall,
So
but
it's
it's
one of
like
the,
that,
basically one of the houses on the hill.
but it's not on the like super steep portion, it's like the,
If it's directly behind Habitat, there's about 3 houses.
yeah, so it's one.
Oh, those are actually pretty groovy little houses,
It's
like
one
those
of
two.
those, yeah, it's, yeah,
It's at the last one on that, it's because it's a dead end.
right, I think it is the last one on the end. Can't get a good picture of it, but, so anyway, she's interested.
No, need to get rid of it.
It's like it kind of has the stone features on the facade. It's like
It's going the wrong way.
this one,
It's that house up on the top,
yeah,
and they actually used to have an open mind back behind that house.
right, and I
Is that-
think
is-
that's partially also why she was considering.
I would totally be down for that one,
Um,
because that's a neat house.
So,
And those lots extend quite a ways up the hill.
yes, and so
Did she get BLM land with that one?
I'm about to pull it out. I just need to interact with them. So if you don't mind, maybe we can just jump to the final item.
Yeah,
on
that's-
here.
This is a work session, we have freedom.
So really what I wanted to bring up tonight is like, kind of to, Mike's point of kind of starting the process, like here's a good example of this type of form. But as we move forward with, well, I don't have it up,
Oh,
but
I thought you had that.
as we move forward with trying to promote these, it looks like this one did not have BLM land attached. 1616 wall, yeah, but yeah, so anyway, because there is some interest, and I think that is a goal of the board and the city in general. My thought was before we put anything together and really dig in, I don't actually know the best place to start on that promotion. I know like with the district in general, you have to get a lot of support and surveys and all of that, but if we just wanted to start targeting individual properties, would those folks need to, what do they need in order to submit?
Well,
As
there's-
far as formal surveys and things like that?
there's sort of two categories they fit into. One is to be local, be designated locally.
Right,
And that's as easy as the city would like to make it, although I'd want to read the rules. But, local designation is pretty much whatever the city wants.
sure,
Then what's more rigorous is a national register nomination, and that's part of what she wants to do, and that requires, if you see what was submitted for the historic district, you basically are putting together something like that to see if you can get get listed in the national register.
right,
So it's, that's sort of a good, and that's what the starting point question for her is that,
yeah,
you've got those two ways of doing it. You can either do national register or apply for national register, but in any case, the city can make that as easy as the city wants to make it.
for the
For the local designation.
Okay, so that is helpful because I suppose it would be the same thing with a local historic district if we had.
Well, it says too, in order to apply for national register, you have to go through the state historic preservation, but I think we could start. So when you're talking about this, I'm kind of all over the place, but one of the ways that I think I love Michael, I love your architectural form. I think if we were to look at that survey and look at all the architectural forms and have a style sheet for all of them with a pictorial, example here in town, like the one that you did. So, and then why would this house be historic for Idaho Springs? Everybody's house has a story. I think most of these houses have some kind of history. Apparently my house was the postmaster's house, very first postmaster's house. Why would this be historic for Idaho Springs? Why don't we start there? Not only using the National Register as kind of a guideline, but do you know the history? Can we use that survey that we had that shows, is it significant? Is it only moderately significant? Is it not significant at all? Is there personal history, that makes it significant to the town? Because I think personal history is something that we as a town ought to include. I don't know how you guys feel, but I think that is part of the value of some of our historic homes.
Right.
And that's part of what would have to be done for National Register anyway,
Yeah,
is to give the history of the property as well as some history about the persons associated with the building. But that's on the form.
Everybody in Idaho Springs was a character though, 150 years ago. I mean,
And like when the hotel was done, they did they came up with several pages of history.
Doc Holliday stayed there apparently.
Yeah, so they did, whether it was them or someone else, someone put together like 2 complete pages of history on the building.
well, and if you're only designated locally, that still is good for us and them, I suppose, but like, what is the benefit to homeowner? And I understand the tax credit benefits if you're state or national register, but you,
If you're local, it's just a matter of something you'd like to have. Now that you'd like your house to be designated. Most of the other benefits, well, for example, there's a benefit in terms of the building code by being just an old building. Designation, I forget if you need to be National Register eligible, and then you get further leniency in the building code
right,
that you don't get otherwise.
But that might be something from a local standpoint, you know, do we allow for some grace, maybe elasticity in the building code?
right, so it kind of, yeah, that's true, because we do adopt the code, so we could have perhaps some exception processes, maybe that come here, like for.
And one of the other things that can be done is you can actually put incentives in the zoning ordinance. In terms of, you know, whether it's setbacks, height,
Yeah, you don't
parking
have to sit
requirement,
down.
whatever. You basically,
So like if you're locally designated property, you get an incentive.
you get some kind of incentive. If the city really wanted to go far with that, you would look at the transferable development rights, which says you could build a building twice as big as here. So you can take half of that square footage that you could build, and that could be used somewhere else in a receiving zone, which would have to be
Right.
designated.
Yeah, which.
Does that get us into Tabor issue, like,
Hmm.
or I know I was at the housing authority last night, so maybe I'm just confusing TDRs with the.
No, I don't think that is a trend. There's only a few
No,
places
it's
that
not.
have done it. Aspen or Pitkin County has done it. It's Pitkin County has done it. And downtown Denver's had it for years, and
Yeah,
you don't think about it, but that basically means you make a skyscraper taller.
Well, my question would be, if we need to provide an incentive, do we provide a list and an aid in applying for, like, how do you apply for your tax incentives if you're doing preservation?
yeah,
But also, how does that make your life easier here in Idaho Springs from a building code standpoint? Like, to
right,
me, as I'm thinking about it as a homeowner, what would be an incentive for me? That would be an incentive for me. You know, at this point, I'm not doing anything to my house, but I might
sure.
want to.
Well, and I think that is a good point, because I see here on the state historic fund history Colorado website, you can get a state tax credit if you are on the local register of the CLG, so it does give them something.
Well, there you go.
But if we did start to, but I suppose, like, if someone's, like, for a single house, I don't know her goal, that would be one of the questions to come forward. If she just wants a local designation, it's, like you said, there's a lot of leeway, but if the goal is to do something further besides kind of preserving the form and function of the home forever, fine and all of that, then, and she wants national, then you have to get a lot more out of it.
Yeah, and then, and that's a case of where one of the things is, again, how much help the city wants to give someone to, if it's national registry, to help them get it. Because there is, yeah, I've been doing it a lot of years, so it seems easy to me, but I think for most people now, when you see it, it doesn't look easy when you first see it.
Is that
Yeah.
something, though, that you feel you could, your office and within the scope of your job, you could legitimately provide or train some of our staff to be helpful with?
I think so. I would say right at this moment, I don't, because I'm doing the comprehensive plan stuff still, like balancing quite a lot of.
You're like, I'm in the
projects.
weeds, don't throw that at me right now.
But I think in, like, as a 2026 project, that as, if we can start to promote in 2026, let's actually get some. Let's have a goal of like 5 homes a year or something, or a full district.
Oh, I would like 5 homes a year, but my question would be, how do we incentivize this? So if you are locally designated
You know,
for a CLG, which we are, you get tax credits. What
And
could we
there's a
do?
small amount of grant money.
And you have access to grant money that you don't if you're not locally designated. You know, we can start with that. We can start, I think, with, because people who are preservation minded, that would be interesting to them. People who are not preservation minded are not going to care.
sure.
Yeah, I mean, if you get somebody who's really interested, get a little momentum going, get a few more people and a few more people. Hey, That sounds like a great start. And us help them as much as they can, at least to get started.
And you can go to the state website, but Georgetown has 3 different kinds of tax credit forms on their site. So that's a quick place to look.
That's true.
True.
Also, I think maybe I would like to set a goal of could we get 10 houses next year?
I tell us that the starting goal, and I think getting houses next year is a good idea. Starting goal is to set up the procedure. In other words, this is what can be done. This is sort of set up, this is how the research can be done and the information can be put together. In other words, the city prepares, so step 1 is so the city prepares to be able to assist people
Yes.
who would like to do this.
Yeah, that is what I was hoping to start the conversation on tonight, really, is,
Well, I think starting with that survey about what kind of house do you have? What was it listed as far as importance?
right, yeah, like from the other sort of meeting.
And then how do we help people research the personal history of the house? Like, it took me a while, but I was able to research my first house, and I know that the woman who was the wife and then later the vice president of the second largest bank in Idaho Springs was the developer and first owner of my home. You know, but it took me a while, so how do we help people? And I had to go through, and this was like 12 years ago. How do we help people access archives of, the taxes? How do we teach them how to use the archives? Because Christine at the archives of the library is amazing. She's absolutely an asset, but she's only there 2.5 days a week. How do we teach people to use or give them access to a lot of the digitized newspapers from that time frame?
Right.
Right. And I'll mention on that form I created, that's actually more detailed than what you typically see on a National Register nomination. In terms of just that one part of it, like it's 9 pages long, and that sort of relates to 1 page, but that's actually more detail than you would even see in a nomination.
Right, so if someone came and could identify all of this, then that would be quite a good starting point, right?
Yes, and it wouldn't be difficult to set that up, and that's about 3 hours of research and about 1 hour putting that form together. And it would be faster doing the second style than that.
Because the form's already together, it's building the form.
And there's 2 other versions of that form. There's another version that takes that 3rd column, and instead of the sort of what we would like to see people do with their building, instead that's a list of addresses. So everyone knows what, for that particular style, what are the buildings in town that are in the same style. And the 3rd version is to do it specifically for that building.
Right.
And I think virtually everything that's there on that list does apply to that building.
Right. Right. So this really could function for Mr. Smith, who owns this house, as sort of a plan for treatment over the next, however long he owns it. In some ways, maintain these things, preserve these things, do the things that are important. And if someone else could identify, like that other house that now is a commercial building of some sort, if they said, oh yeah, we're pretty sure we're the same, this could be a starting point for them to put something together as well. But obviously it doesn't get at to the personal narrative.
And what's on that form in the first 2 columns is just research online about, okay, what is the National Folk style? And then everything in the middle column is just an observation about the building across the street. And I think everything that's in that middle column can be found on that building.
Right, and these, because like aspect, roof shape. You've said typical for National Folk style, front, side, or cross gable pyramidal. So then you can say, yep, it does meet that, right? So then that's an easy checklist box to put into account. The other question I had was like, let's say that he did take, I would guess that this particular house for this, I'll look it up as he's already in the historic
Oh,
district,
right.
so it's not as relevant to him, but he's Minor Street.
In other words, unless he wants to go to the effort, he's already covered.
Right, but for someone, like, let's say is typical of the style, but you're only medium integrity instead of high integrity, like this person's home.
That then becomes difficult for not impossible, but for National Register, you sort of need to be a good example if you're a single building.
Right,
If you're a district, if you create a district, medium is okay, because that supports the district.
right, so I think that maybe is I've not done the work to see how many are actually high integrity buildings per this chart, but I would say most are in the medium
I'm gonna say most are medium.
category, or low, but I'd say there's quite a lot in the medium category. For example, the building from this form is shown to be medium, but it's in the district.
I think within 3 blocks of the district, there were maybe 20 that were high.
Mhm. Yeah,
I think, I actually compiled the numbers, I just don't remember. off the
Do you
top of my
think
head.
if we also looked at, like, as far as the local designation and then on the state, if we looked at, oh, you're medium and you're a single house, but you are within 2 to 3 blocks of our historic district, that actually supports our buffer zone
sure.
and like, that is a supporting factor of the character and the feeling of the architectural feeling of the town.
I don't know if the state has done that, doesn't mean it couldn't do that, but normally normally the way they do it is, okay, you draw your district boundaries and what's inside, and the rule, which they don't actually say, what is actually what is used, you need to have 50% of the buildings within the boundary qualify as
Okay.
at least medium, I guess we would gonna say.
Well, there's gotta be ways around this, because I know, like, I come back to Boulder. Boulder has a district that is 5 houses large. And the only reason that it's a district is because the owners of the houses at the time, they were all built by the same architect. And they decided that this architect was important to commemorate it as a local district.
Well, you have I'm forgetting the building that's right across Virginia, doesn't that have individual designation already?
Oh, the Elks Lodge?
Yes.
Oh, yeah,
Elks
the Elks Lodge is on the national.
So in other
register.
words, you're close to being able to make a small district between those 2 buildings. Now, if you get one more, you've got you've got 3.
Does it hurt that they are bisected by the Habitat for Humanity homes?
That's okay, because in other words, you were to say you've got 3 buildings, you've got Habitat and then the 2 buildings, more than 50%.
Okay, that makes sense.
So
So that there may be a way of leveraging off of the building.
It could be the
So-
16th Avenue Historic District.
yeah,
And it wouldn't hurt the property that already has it. It's just saying that they're now in a district.
if we were to locally designate that one that's on Wall Street, for example, right?
Or, well, I guess the idea would be, okay, if you want to take a shot at National Register, you would say, okay, we're creating a little district
Around this already registered building,
that includes that building.
right?
Because also you could, I mean, right across the street, for better or for worse, the Club Hotel is federally designated.
So then you're
Yeah.
talking about 3 buildings in terms of making a small district.
Well, the Club Hotel's already in
Yes,
our
that's right,
National
already
Historic
is.
District.
Well, then that would be the possibility of expanding the district and how
Right.
how the property owners would feel about being in an expanded district. But that would be the easiest way.
The Elks don't care because they're already done by it.
Yeah.
We can't talk about the Club Hotel. And then, the lady up on 1616 clearly that's what she's after.
Right, and she is, you can see just like on that screen, like she's just outside this like potential boundary, because she'd be like right in the top right corner, just outside the potential boundary, but Elks is
Right next to the cross, right there.
16th. So if you could get a couple folks on Wall Street even, or,
Well, there's Habitat for Humanity right behind the Elks, and then
right,
up where it says Wall Street, there's one
Yeah.
little tiny house that has a little shed and a little yard, because those properties used to be the same property,
Mhm.
and then I think they were split and sold separately.
I
Yeah,
would
that was,
actually,
that was a very messy subdivision.
what I think could be interesting would be, what about like a Wall Street? So, you know, like, if that was the goal, is like, let's try to get. So the way it works is you'd need, how many, like, everyone would have to be. in the
There's
board
9
would
people
be
on
in the
West Side
district,
Wall
or would
Street.
you, like, is it? Like, let's
It's
say,
usually best if all the property owners want to go in.
yeah,
Steamboat for years did not have a district because they could not get enough businesses to agree to it, and they finally did get a district. And I don't remember in the end what they did to finally get over the threshold
right.
of getting a majority wanting to do it.
Right, because that, like, when you look at this, which is like 101 sites, I don't know how you possibly get 101 owners to agree to be part of a historic district.
No, but if we just look just at Wall Street, there's 9 houses just on that
Yeah,
14
the
through
upper portion.
16.
To the west, yeah.
And then if you did the two little houses there, so that's 11 homes.
Yeah,
I don't know about the person that subdivided with the stone house, but the members of Wall Street are in a rare state of grace and agreement,
right.
because we just, seriously, we just paved it. You know, we have had a lot of meetings with them city council wise over the last year. And there was just they gave little, part of the problem that Wall Street was, it was not a city street. Because pieces of property from individual property owners came out into the road. And then the property owners could not agree to give that little piece to the city. And so the road was not a city road to be maintained.
Mhm.
However, the road is now a city road. Those little tiny squares and triangles or whatever have been deeded to the city. Am I correct in that? Yeah.
Right, I think that's been completed.
Yeah, that's done. We
in order
finished
to
that.
Do the paving,
You
but,
know, one of the things that's nice about Wall Street is it's a true hillside location. In other words, even if you go further west on Virginia, it doesn't have the character of Wall Street, particularly when you go east on it, because you're literally on an extremely steep hillside.
yeah,
I think there could be an east side and a west side Wall Street if you look at those 2 streets.
right, but, so, I mean, the question that I posed earlier, like, looking at all of them up on the screen, like, there's like, half of them are medium, but the rest are low integrity, per this at least. So like, if they all came together and said, we wanna be a historic district, what's, like, is there any basis in which we could really say, yes?
If it's less than a majority of at least medium, probably National Register would be difficult. I don't know that it's, I wouldn't, I don't have enough information to say it's impossible, but.
Right, but a local, we
A
could
local
obviously-
is something that the city can just decide we want to do this.
Sure, okay,
I
that's.
would actually, I think from the residents are like suspicious standpoint, a local is a decent place to start, because with local, one of the things that people like is that you can sort of determine what are the contributing factors, what are the years of significance, you know,
Sure, right.
what can we make allowances for? If you look, oh, you took it down, but if you look at, most of those were built,
Yeah,
in between,
it's like 1895 and 19.
yeah, like, so basically, it's a 15-year period of significance. We could extend it to 25 years, just to
Right,
cover everybody that's up there.
but yeah, so then I guess the next question would be, let's say 1616 Wall just wanted to come in on our own and get a designation. And then we expand it, because we're like, look how great it's been for her, let's make these 10 houses. Like, if she wanted to come in, like, we'd have to just hold her to our current guidelines, right? So, given that that's the case, like, our guidelines are not incredible, I guess, at dealing with residential structures. They're better suited for, I mean, they would work, right? But
Yeah, although we benefit from the fact that there actually are 2 houses in the district,
right,
and that is maybe at some point getting back to amending the guidelines again.
Yeah.
But sort of, okay,
Create
with this,
residential.
with this in mind, the fact that there are two houses, it's reasonable to say we need some house-oriented guidelines that are different than a commercial building.
I really like the idea of creating an architectural style sheet for all of our styles
Yeah,
that are listed on that. I
Right.
think that really helps people to see, oh, look, my house does have some significance.
In that sheet, part of the idea was where I ended with it was, this is something that could be given out
Mhm.
in terms of any particular building or any particular style.
But also, I kind of like the idea, what do you guys think? That if she wants to do a local designation, that is a good starting place.
But she'd still need to get some history together on why it's special, more special than any.
Can she bring pictures of the mine?
And I think an archivist would be able to help with that, whether it's through the library or through the county. And is the county archivist, she's like retired or?
So that's Christine Bradley. She used to be the county archivist.
Mhm.
I don't know that we have a county archivist anymore. I want to say that we do, but I don't know. The county is, tightening the purse strings.
Probably not.
But Christine works in the library district's archives. And she's very, very, like, she has access
Yeah,
and the ability to access a lot of documentation. Because as the county archivist, she did a lot of collating and collecting information specific to Quick Creek County.
well, I'll reach out to her.
She would love, she
Start
gave
a
our talk at the
conversation.
library last year. She was telling people how to go about looking up your house.
Right,
That would be a great process for us to implement or put on here. Here's a PDF. This is what you need to do. Because she has done a lot of work in digitization of paper, records.
Mhm.
She was amazing.
Well, and I think most people wouldn't know where to go, so that's what the city comes, we're not going to necessarily be able to hold your hand through the whole process, but we can give you all the tools.
We can stand next to you a little bit.
Yeah,
And I gave Libby the Sanborn maps about 4 or 5 years ago. I don't know if they've done
I
anything
would
with
bet
them,
they have
but she
been-
has them.
I would bet they have been digitized. Christine is on the ball.
yeah. Right.
Like she did a lot of interviews with Chi before Chi passed away.
Mm.
I don't know if you guys know Chi Bell. I know you do.
Okay, so that's helpful, and it's helpful that, like, I do think that ideal first goal is let's just move forward with local designations. Because that still does get people benefits of at least state tax credits.
So with local designations, when they do exterior, they have to come to us, correct?
National does not,
National does not, but
neither does state, in fact.
yes, I know,
So,
sadly.
They mean local does not,
well, local would have to come to us for,
depending upon what the city did.
true, right, but yeah, like, so example, Argo, which is just national, would not come to us for COA.
Those things still have not been stained. I have something else I need to talk to you about, I'll bring it up in later.
Sure, but yeah, so I mean, that's been clear is if you're, and the same with like the Elks, this is not in a sort of outside of our purview if they needed to do work.
Oh, see, and I just told them you have to come see, you're nationally designated, you have to come see HPRC.
Yeah, but they.
And they
don't,
said,
because
why? And I
they're
said, so
not-
that we can help you make sure that you're going in the right
I mean,
direction.
certainly we would help them make sure that they don't do anything to upset the MPS guidelines, right? But technically, they don't get a COA from them.
So why does the downtown district need to see away from us? Because they're nationally designated.
There's a reason, but I don't.
It's somewhere in an ordinance that says.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah,
That's the only way it would have happened, is it would have been an ordinance that designated and made them subject to it. And that's part of what,
yeah.
that's a requirement, that's sort of a requirement of getting CLG.
Chapter 22 has it, following area which has been designated as a historic district on the National Register is hereby designated as the historic preservation district in the city. So we designated it as our historic preservation district as well. And then locally designated since that side.
I think that locally designated should have to come to us, period.
Well, do, but if we created guidelines for a residential district that said you don't have to do this or this or this, then fine, but like Hot Springs has to come to us or any of our other local sites.
Does that help you on, discussion on how to start moving forward with that?
I think so, yeah. And Mike sending along this kind of first sheet. What I might do in the next few weeks is try my hand at putting together another one. And then I'll send it along and get critiques and feedback and tear me apart if you wish.
Nobody is going to tear you apart for taking on a project.
I
Full stop.
do have red color on my Remarkable that I can mark out.
Perfect.
Yeah, and I was gonna mention, you put a lot of work into what you set out this time. It's clear there's a lot of staff time in what was distributed.
Well, yes. It's, I mean, again, with coming into this job, historic preservation was what I was least experienced with. But it's also the thing that is in a lot of ways the most interesting. So it's been a joy to learn more about it and dig in, but it's more of a learning process than zoning or housing.
Yeah, because we talked about that, because this was not necessarily your sphere of work in Summit.
Right, yeah, because other than a few nationally registered sites around Summit County, like we didn't have jurisdiction over Breckenridge, for example, which has all of most of the historic districts in the county. So anyway, I think that's good direction moving forward, unless anyone else wants to talk about anything else. Otherwise, we could continue onward.
All right, do you want to talk about the America 250, Colorado 150 grant?
Sure. So, and Lisa knows about this and Mike knows about this because I've talked with sites and facilities about it and city council, but there's a grant opportunity at the moment called basically celebrating the Colorado 150th anniversary statehood, America's 250th of 1796. And so basically it's for educational projects or other projects that kind of celebrate the anniversary and celebrate history and all of this. So I've been working with Sadie, who's the director of business and community promotions, on this grant application. Basically, it's for a historic multimedia sort of walking tour that can be used that builds on resources we already have, because there is some brochure thing, in history, walking toward things down at the visitor center. I've talked with Jan for the historical stuff.
And they're working on a new tour already.
So we don't want to ruffle anyone's feathers or
Yes,
step
but
on
we also
toes,
fund them,
but-
so we can work with them.
Well, and they're happy to, because if we can create, the idea is like, okay, we have a map of the city, we have, let's say at the start, 15 historic sites, like historic downtown, like the city sites and facilities, and then some really good examples of significance around town, like Cargo, or like, I really like the project support work that's going on right now in visitors at the senior center, because they've stripped, they've
And
got.
also, honestly, like the Pink House,
Mhm,
that is for Idaho Springs, that's a super ornate house
right,
that is maintained, it's sort of Gothic Victorian look. When you look at Idaho Springs, we don't have, like, that's much more Georgetown
Mm.
than it is Idaho Springs if you look at overarching architecture.
right, so the point kind of is twofold, is like, one, from a business community promotions, creating like this map where like you can be walking along and you see a little QR code that says like tour stop 6, or whatever, and you scan it and you go onto a page and it has photos and it has like the history of the site as much as you can find.
And one of the things I brought up at sites and facilities is that from the Sanborn maps, we know the route of the Colorado and Southern Railroad. So you could put signs along that route to where you get some more information about railroading in Clear Creek County.
And it kind of bridges the gap between east side, which has some historic sites, and historic downtown. And I think with the written text, what Sadie and the team who's working on it as well wants to do is also record an audio of that. So that if you're like walking between, say, the Argo or the Steep Canyon or whatever in downtown, maybe there's a 3-minute talk that you can listen to as you walk. And so it cuts down on initial signage needs because you can listen to it.
Well, I think if they're creating a tour, I would like to see if we get this grant. Let's do the QR codes. Let's do the tour stop QR codes. Let's do wayfinding. We have talked about that from the city council standpoint. Wayfinding signs around town we are seriously lacking, like people don't know how to get the water wheel.
Right, and we have a grant right now that Sadie is administering for wayfinding sort of citywide. So this will tie into that because, I mean, the fact of the matter is if you go on the Visit Idaho Springs website, which I was talking to Kent today, and he could build this out where you basically have like a map and you click on each site, you can navigate between sites. It has pictures, it has maybe even some videos of talking about it, but it also is a map, and so it shows you how to get to the
That is
next
fantastic.
site.
I'd just like to say, I would like to see the old cemetery story added in there. You guys know the old cemetery story? The cemetery used to be 7th, 8th, and 9th.
Mm.
And the house at 9th in Colorado was one of the original mortuary sites. And the reason that we no longer have 7th, 8th, and 9th as a cemetery, because I've seen them on, I think, an old Sanborn map, is because the creek actually flooded the cemetery, which was north of the creek, and sent things moving on downstream along Colorado. So that's why if you look at the new cemetery, the newer cemetery, it's actually up on a hillside, and people have had to build terraces for their grave sites, but there's also upper and lower Potter's Field. And they will tell you, hey, things shift, and we don't necessarily know how they buried, things that were moved during the flood. So there should be an upper and lower Potter's Field. But if you find something that is of a human remains when you are interring or building your, plot, please stop and call Public Works.
Yeah.
And one of the things that is similar nature is that before more time goes on, it would be good in the next year to find out what does CDOT have in its archives, because presumably they
Oh.
surveyed everything before they
That's good.
put the interstate in.
Well, we hope.
Probably did, although when did it first go through the interstate?
Late 60s, early 70s?
It was,
Late 60s, I want to say 60s.
Well, then, by then, section 106 was in effect, so they were required to document.
yeah.
Well, I know they
it was
just-
completed through Idaho Springs in 1961, actually.
Okay, so that precedes 106 being a requirement.
Well, they are actually, one of our talks at the library too was, right around the tunnel somewhere, they found, basically a Native American rest stop. So they excavated the rest stop, they found all the things, and then they buried it. Did you come to that talk?
I didn't, well, I
Okay,
heard
but
that talk.
they should have documented it though.
Oh, they documented the
Yeah.
heck out of it.
That's very important because we don't have a lot of information about the Native American period.
Mhm.
Well, they looked at that, it was really interesting, like, it was basically a rest stop, there was enough signs of, but it's like that kind of thing, somewhere in this area, like, they won't tell you where it is, but that would be, if you're down by where the old Scott Lancaster Bridge is, that would be an excellent site for the Idaho's, because that's still Idaho Springs. This is in this area,
Right,
and CDOT, like, the architect, that was working with CDOT, the head architect, he has all the information and is willing to share it.
right, yeah, I heard that talk as part of the Hill Project team. It was like.
Yeah, he came to Devil's
he
Gate
could've
and then he
talked
came to
about it.
us.
You could have talked for hours about it.
Oh, that was fascinating. So it'd be exciting if they had something like that for when they came through here.
So yeah, it'd be worth contacting them and
Mhm.
see how challenging that is to
Yeah, it's
get
just
that
really
information.
exciting to think like how we can do a better job of documenting Idaho Springs
Right,
in verified walkable history,
right.
or sort of walkable.
Well, and I went to a few talks last year that Scraps the Soil put on, and I went to an interesting one with the Bolins. And they were just talking about like going on a date at the bowling. I'm forgetting the story, so if they're watching.
Used to be the bowling alley.
It's like the bowling alley, which is Tommyknocker, right? Or wherever in that vicinity, and you were sitting in Tommyknocker, and you can imagine like that is a part of history that if you don't tell those stories now, you're going to lose it forever potentially, other than in pictures.
Well,
So
this could also be like documenting all of the buildings in the downtown historic district and then that could expand into, oh, would you like to document your house? We can help you document that so that we
Right.
have, the city has a repository of, Mike, here's your house, here's all the people that lived in your house, here's the one crazy thing that happened in your house, like,
Right,
and that is available
right.
in public archives, Idaho Springs Public Archives.
Mhm.
And the other thing in terms of, there's a significant portion of the population that is extremely interested in ancestry.
Mhm.
So I think there might be quite a bit of good reception to producing that kind of information. And for someone to find out what's the history of who lived in their house.
And I think a lot of the buy-in would come from the younger people that are moving in here because they want to know. The older generation that has owned their homes forever, you know, they have so much information passed from great grandma to grandma to mom to them, and then they're kind of like, yeah, this is what we got.
A lot of people like to share it.
Yeah, they do like to share it, but the young people, it seems to me, in my opinion, they want to go out and find it.
Yeah.
You know, they're
I-
not satisfied with blah, 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 blah. Here's where we end right now. They want to go like way back and find all the stories versus just what grandma and grandpa said. Well, what did the aunt say? Well, what did that town person say? You know, they
Yeah.
want more.
But that, and running with that idea, that is something that increases, if I'm looking from a bigger picture, that increases the historical significance of Idaho Springs. We are a city that has documented who lived here because, you know, our tagline is where stories live.
Right. Yeah,
Here's our stories.
it works very, and I will say, you know, like. The caveat with this grant is it's not an incredible amount of money and a lot of it will be. Building the infrastructure so that we can continue to add to it over time, you know, so it might only be. 15 sites at the start that have a good amount of history and interactive elements and
It's an
then.
excellent jumping off point though.
Right, and then from there, like creating another page with the same format for a new site with new history is as clicking buttons, you know, so, and Kent Sledmaker is he's building out the whole Visit Idaho
Site is
Springs
really good.
website. And so he's like, we can have all that functionality and it well within the budget, plus budget for like video stuff and audio stuff and all of that sort of things to make it this really interactive thing. So,
Have we applied for that grant?
I put the draft in on the 13th and it's due, and they gave me some feedback that I'm working on this week and it's due next Monday. So we'll submit that.
And
And
council already
Lisa,
voted
I'm
to
gonna,
support it.
I'll need you to sign this because it needs the signature of the HPRC chair. Then I need the mayor's signature on it, but,
The state requires on grant applications that they want to see your draft before you submit your application.
I think that's great though, because they gave you feedback about,
yeah. And
this
the-
would have flunked you.
Right, and I think the feedback was really helpful, you know, that's the thing about that group, the State Historic Fund, everyone there is just so helpful, it's great, like.
Well, it's because we have money that no other state has.
Right, it's true, yeah, so it works quite well. So anyway, that's going through, if it happens, if we get funded, actually. If we get funded, then I think the goal will be to have it up and running by like mid-year, let's say for 4th of July, so people coming to town can start interacting with it, because we.
You'll have to go schedule to the state anyway.
And they didn't, they said we probably wouldn't be able to start spending it money until February, so that kind of gives the timeline, but I think even if we don't get the grant, I've sparked enough interest from the Business Community Promotions Board that they would want to
Good
work
job.
on it anyway.
How much is it for?
The grant's only for 25,000, but there's no match requirement, so it's sort of free money if we get
It's a
it.
check. All we have to do is cash it.
Yeah, and do the in-kind work, of course, but
Yeah, but the fact that you have Kent that's willing to do the website, when we had a website for years that was just languishing.
mhm,
And the business and promotion board is behind this,
right.
that says a lot too.
Well, and it checks the box of the sites and facilities of like more outreach and education, because like right now, the Potter House, I was talking to a couple of people today, and Kent knew it existed, but Ross, who was also in the meeting, didn't know what it was, you know, and we just spent, what, $50,000 restoring it, and it's amazing, you know. No one's,
Well, I really think though, the idea, if we spent another $50,000, if we can find it, and make it into a park area where locals can go, put their feet in the water, let their kids, you know, pop around.
Well, and I think that's 10,000, not 50,000.
Oh, so that's it.
But
Let's
anyway,
build it tomorrow.
That's
I don't
pretty
know-
small
I
in
don't know
the
about
scheme.
that, but it is quite small, and I think if we can start attracting people there, do something like this, then, and start getting more people over the water wheel without having to spend any money on actual vehicle signs, then those are two huge ways.
You know, every time I drive through here and wanna go park in something and I see people taking pictures where they're not gonna get a picture, they'll get mostly highway. I always stop and I say, you know, if you walk over there and go
Yeah.
under the highway, you'll be right in front of it with no obstructions and people are amazed that they can get that close to it.
That,
You could
some
actually
of our
put a
signs
sign
need
with
to
a
go
QR code to tell people that. In other words, where are the most traveled routes by visitors? And actually put up a small sign with a QR code that says, here are the spots for such and such picture.
That's true, yeah, and it's like what you had mentioned, like as part of the mobility hub downtown improvements project. Putting kiosks in important places so where we can advertise, but also events and things, but also put that sort of information. Or if you're coming in, you have like an immediate place to go that shows. Here's where you need to go to get here, 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 and here's your top highlights and all of
Yeah,
that.
one of them mobility hub and then at least one in the historic district.
one at the train, because I see people down here at the train all the
Yeah,
time.
cause you can see that in the parking lot,
Mhm.
so, anyway.
But they still can't figure out to go
Underneath the highway.
under to get to the water
Right.
wheel.
Well, more to come on that, but that's my update there.
Okay, a comment I had on what was listed in terms of stakeholders, what about adding the library in the school district?
Yeah, library did mention interest, and I said, yes, I need to add them in, add library and school district. And I don't know if I had the rec district in there or not, but yeah, I did.
Well, in the rec, that would be good because the rec district already does tours, like they do tours of the
I
cemetery.
just did that one last Thursday.
Was it good?
It was fun. It's very, spooky, but that was fun. And I did the downtown one last year, and that was also fun, so. Good
You
one.
should do the train, Georgetown train.
Like a ghost tour.
I've been on that ghost tour. It's really cool.
I have to. It's fun.
Yeah, school district. They actually wanted they had brought up, hey, you should talk more about outreach to the school in the comments, so. It's a missing, I think, you don't.
Well, we have one of our monuments up at the school.
Yeah, it's right out front, and I bet you most of the teachers, parents, and students don't really know what that is.
Okay, so, that is our Colorado grant, the American, is there anything more we need to add with that?
Yeah, I'll keep you up to date on that. Get it or.
All right,
The one I commented is under potential budget items, you say guides. I think maybe to explain a little more what guides means in under potential budget items, just needs to be a little longer to say, a guide of what.
Right. Yeah, well, and originally I was thinking, could we as like a kickoff have some like actual staffed guided tour of some of the sites?
I would guide a tour.
And it may get complicated, but we'll see.
I'm dressing up as Margaret Robbins, the very first librarian for for Idaho Springs in March, so I am just fine with doing a guided tour.
Where did you find out about the talks you were talking, you mentioned, or? some
So
of
the
these
two,
guys that was
the
on
two that you
website?
see, the Devil's Gate Historics, it is basically Georgetown and Silver Plume, but their Devil's Gate History Group, forum, they do like 6 programs a year. They're doing operate half the year. They are outstanding. Have you been to any of them, Michael? They're really good. And they, like, there's always one that the kids put on every year. They're very well attended, they're very well researched. The library is an annual one every March. So if you look at that library website, it will show you. I don't know of anybody else that's doing historic talks.
Well, and I sometimes see, like, they'll send out from the History Colorado to us as a CLG, like, hey, here's this like talk or webinar or whatever coming through. And try to attend when I can, but I do a bad job of sending it out, so I'll start forwarding those if you're interested in seeing.
Look at Devil's Gate though, because Devil's Gate tends to focus around Georgetown and it's Georgetown Silver Plume Historic District. And then the library, I don't know what the John Tomei Library does, but the Idaho Springs Library tends to talks around the Idaho's that are focused on the history of the Idaho Springs area.
Cool event that I will be attending this year is the Hamel House Christmas Gala
Ooh, Bobby Servant.
in Georgetown on 13th. It's like December 13th and 20th.
It's really cool.
Seems cool. Yeah, trying to learn as much, get as involved as possible. So,
You should do the Capitol Prize tour too.
where is that?
That's in Georgetown, the Capitol Prize mine.
Hmm.
They're actually still doing a little bit of mining. It's a really cool mine.
Yeah, I did the Phoenix story recently.
And Georgetown actually has an active mining zone district.
Mhm. Well, the Lebanon that's on the loop is very cool. They own the Lebanon and the Edgar mine. And they're trying to combine them, but they haven't quite done that yet. But the Lebanon goes right under 70.
Well, it's like a property. Didn't know that existed. Need to market better. The Capital Prize line.
They just you're right, they don't market as well as they should.
Okay, well, keep rolling. Yes.
Mhm.
So comprehensive plan update, I had heard from most of the group about suggestions, comments and things. So this was really, I compiled all of those and I put together that kind of like spreadsheet. Like I said, here's all the old objectives, here's all of the new things that we've identified, which has pretty much quadrupled the number of potential strategies or objectives that we have.
Cause you didn't have enough work?
What I've not put together at all is like any sort of implementation charts for anything yet. Those will come, but I don't know if we really think it's reasonable to have 50 strategy objectives. Maybe it's okay.
Well, part of it is if they're, I think about this by a previous comment I made, is to split them into time ranges. So in other words,
Yeah.
the next year, the next 5 years, the next 10 years of saying, and that way it doesn't really hurt having a longer list because you basically have a realistic short-term list. And you're not trying to do 50 things, you're trying to do 5 things or 10 things in the first year.
Yeah, the thing that and I'm okay with having a very long list because like I think where the comprehensive plan sort of fell short maybe last time was there wasn't super specific objectives. It's like, let's just explore how to increase participation in the HPRC, and those sorts of things, which, yeah, of course, but like, all you have to do is look into it a little bit and you could say, well, I did achieve this goal. Obviously, we achieved it. Now we have a whole mission, but.
And I can send you these suggestions, but one of the things I noticed with the first objective that was listed is to actually split that into 2 separate objectives. Because much of that objective deals with communications. And there are also communication items in later objectives, which I'm sort of suggesting group those together. But to create a separate objective that deals with regulations, because there are at least 3 in here, and I think there are more later on, that specifically deal with some aspect of regulation. And to sort of group those together, and then that first objective is not as long as it is right now.
Right. That's a good suggestion.
But I'll send you the specific suggestions I have regarding rearranging things.
I will definitely say so far, from all the sections I've been working on, the historic resources is by far the longest. Which is important, I think, because I don't know, I think about like tourism, economic development, that's something that's actively going on all the time, whereas history, as it's defined as things that's no longer happening, I guess. And so we need to continue to focus on it, to preserve
people-
that character.
If we're gonna look at tourism, like, I think it's really important, and I talk about this a lot with people that I know that are like in business and promotions, and if we don't have our basis of history, it is our foundation.
Correct.
Our tourism goes away, because what does this city have that brings people in here?
Mhm.
I mean, yes, we've got some cool shops, they're interesting and unique and whatever.
Well, I think the city is developing it's on a very good path in terms of being a recreation hub.
Yeah,
In terms of the amount of people come here for, for biking, for rafting or whatever. So I think that's something that's happening, but I think what's important on the history part is that's sort of diversifying the reasons people have to visit, come here and support shops. It's just another reason to sort of build on the history. Plus, you don't have a bigger sign than the Argo Mill.
right.
For people passing by, they're gonna see a big building, a big old building.
Mhm.
You can't have a better sign than that.
Well, and like, I know just from working downtown, I worked downtown all summer. I would see people who were coming in to go hiking or biking, but they would come in and they would leave. Whereas the people that came here because this is a really interesting historic town,
Right,
came here, wandered around downtown, they drove around to look at the houses. This is so cool, what else should we go see? Like, that's where I see history bringing our tourism and history together, because people, they come here, they are looking for things to do that are not necessarily get in the raft or get on the bike or get on the ATVs or go for a hike.
mhm.
I
Yeah,
would agree with you. I think we're very much a recreation hub, but
but yeah, heritage tourism, like the studies show, the reports show, is a huge business in
Yeah,
Colorado, so.
this is one of the things they like to cite is that heritage tourists stay longer and spend more money per day than the average tourist.
Right. Right, yeah, unless you're,
I usually do.
I do, I do too. Like, I remember Williamsburg for years was one of my favorite places to go. Because the whole town,
right,
was stepping back in history,
right. Well, and I
for
think
good or ill.
the whole discussion around mobility hub downtown improvements is about placemaking. I think a lot of it is like HDR has kind of said, we want this to be also about improving the sense of place as you get welcomed in town. And I think to your point of like, part of what makes Idaho Springs a place to visit is the history of it and what we have. And so I know, like, when I go through historic neighborhoods, you do have a sense of wanting to linger longer than like in.
Also, it like, with us using, like, I think for us on HPRC and sites and facilities, with the city going with where stories live, let's tell our stories. We could be just as weird as, keep Portland weird, keep Boulder weird. We have our own weird. There's lots of interesting, that's what,
Yeah,
you make this more personal, people love that. So I'm like, tell the story of the cemetery and how the city instantly responded with, shove it over on a hill.
Yeah, and I think that's why Wall Street may have a very interesting story to tell if it's researched.
I would agree with you.
well, especially because there is like on the property 1616, there is still like a mining past on the landscape.
Well, like my old property, 1901 Wall, that whole part of the subdivision was owned by women.
Mm,
And if you look at the history of that house, the people, I'd say 70% of the owners of that home, from the time that the land was, first done in 18 something, were women.
And if you talk about national grants, although who knows if the money's gonna be there, that's something that they're interested in terms of other groups. What about their history?
Well, and how do we tell the story of the Asian miners, specifically Chinese miners that were up on Montaigne? Like those placer mines are gone, but that is a history. If you go into the Underhill Museum, it took me a minute. There's a picture of Underhill, James Underhill, and he's up in the Edgar mine and all of his students from Colorado School of Mines are Asian because the kids' parents were here building the railroad and they stopped and built the mines and their kids ended up. That's a piece of history that we don't see at all, but if you look at the pictures of James, he had a ton of students who were not, what you think of as a traditional Colorado settler.
Hmm.
And I've talked to people on Montane Park, who are like, oh yeah, there used to be, the Chinese mines up here. I'm like, well, where are they? Oh, they're gone.
Yeah, mine doesn't go away, there's still holes someplace.
Yeah, there's a hole, there's a divot in the ground somewhere. Or, this is sort of silly, but when we first were looking here, we looked at all kinds of houses all over town. And our home inspector told us, if you have a house that is straight, like your floors are level, it just means the mine underneath hasn't collapsed. And I'm like, what are you talking about? And he said, there are mines that riddle this whole area. He said, it's not as bad as up in the Gilpin area. If you look at the mining chart, there are mining claims all over this area.
Oh, yeah, and they go down like 4 different levels.
Yeah, they go down all these levels, and he's like, I know we're hard rock mining, but the mines do collapse from time to time. And I know we looked at a house on Virginia where the floor was like this, like if you roll the marble down it, and he was like, oh yeah, this is a mine. There's a mine under here somewhere.
I lived in a house like that. You could put a marble on one end and let it go and it rolled off.
But he said that's a whole thing with Idaho Springs, in Central City and up in Gilpin, like Black Hawk. That even though we're hard rock mining, these mines do collapse. So that's the kind of interesting thing that I would like to see shared, just those kind of facts.
Yeah, that's
Yeah, it's
great.
not the everyday stuff that people talk about.
Yeah, for us, it's like no big deal.
Yeah. Oh, my floor slopes? Cool. How much?
And a comment on the comprehensive plan, the map on page 14, on the right-hand side or east end, there's a bunch of properties that are shown outlined in green. And there's no explanation of what that is.
Oh, which,
This area here.
oh,
Sort of.
yeah, true. Which is, well,
Next, basically the area immediately east of Safeway.
right, and I think it's
Yeah.
got the Grass Valley potential.
That is the Grass
Area.
Valley.
Yeah, I guess I don't think it's called out in the text to tell
No,
people.
it's definitely not. I think actually probably. Well, it's also this map is missing a couple of our local sites, unfortunately, so. But anyway, I wonder, we probably, as I put in a final map, I would want to just turn that off as a layer since it's not officially designated as a historic resource at the moment. But yeah, looking at this map, I realized it must have been an older version because it's missing the hot springs and the powder house. Which are definitely. Anyway, plenty more work to do.
The comprehensive plan feels like it's an ongoing, gelatinous thing that it just keeps moving. We have to keep corralling it.
Yeah, I mean, it's the sort of thing, it's so big that there's a, we called it an update rather than a rewrite, but there's so many things that have changed in the last 8 years that to just update a golden objective means that there's a lot of things that are out of date. And so it's become slightly bigger than I had originally hoped because there is a lot more updating than, because it has so much information. And I kind of feel like looking at some other plans, they don't have nearly the same amount of background in the plans. Yeah.
It was almost kind of like a placeholder as a section.
Right. But yeah, you look at like I was looking at the transportation section and it talks about I-70 for like 10 pages, it feels like, I don't know that that's really relevant to having like all that background information is interesting, but is it really useful for master
You
planning?
just need to put in there, still under construction.
Always under construction.
Yeah, that'll never change, but so anyway, I actually still think we're on a reasonable timeline based on what I presented to council in April. If I still have Maria here. We'll still get there,
You
but
need an assistant.
early next year, I think. It's just, it's the sort of thing where time doesn't, I can see why people hire consultants because it's the sort of thing that can go on in the background. And then you don't have that much control over it, and there's a lot of rewrites and all those things. I've heard some horror stories in the last few years about master planning consultants, but the problem is like, I don't wanna stop all of these current projects that we're working on as a city. And so balancing this long range with the very short term stuff just makes everything a little bit slow.
I think we're moving along, I mean, honestly, I think we're moving along fine.
Yeah.
When I look at how long it's taken to certain things to get through, I think we're doing okay.
Right. Yeah, well, and even on like some of these huge projects, not all of the decisions that we have to come forward with ultimately, like the phased approach to the mobility hub improvements. That's nothing that people are going to be disappointed that we can't do it all, but but we're still making progress at a good rate, I think, as a city.
Unless they wanna empty the pockets.
Right.
There's nothing we can do there.
All right, well, I'm going to put those comments on board and keep fleshing it out.
I think if you would like to, just knowing what you're working on, how you would like to break it up into a 5-year plan and a 10-year plan.
And a 1 year.
I don't, yeah, a 1 year, so 1, 5, and 10 year,
Yeah,
being realistic in the work that you've done so far and your experience so far. I think that would be fine.
sure. I mean, that does make sense because I think the problem with a lot of these master planning efforts is you pass it and then there's not a whole lot of revisiting it unless you're really unless you're really mindful of that. And so if we can do it for all the sections, here's the things you really want to accomplish in the next 1 to 2 years. If we get to everything else, great. And then 5 years, and then these longer range things we want to keep working on, but if we don't do it, we're gonna.
I do think though, like, I will say, I do think that this city does tend to look at our plans. Only because, well, I don't know that we have a choice, but we do look at our plans and what have we done? Because when we look at the plan from 2017, the comprehensive plan, we've done a lot of things
Right,
in there. I mean, clearly, the parking garage is still not built, but a lot of,
It's getting closer.
But that's been in the plans for 30 years.
but a lot of the things that we wanted to do, if you look at that 2017 comprehensive plan, we've done.
yeah, it's true. It is definitely at the end of its life cycle, and so integrating what we want to do now. And the one thing that I haven't really done that I'd like to take away is, when you did your, when council had their retreat, goals and objectives, that came out of it. And it was passed, I think, as a resolution. I need to integrate those a little bit better as those like first top of mind thing.
Yeah, I don't have anything, Dylan. I'm not like trying to crack the whip over here and
Sure.
move you along. I think, I know how much you're working on.
Well, I wanted to present it to show, here's what we've collated from everyone's suggestions and let's keep, kind of working through it. So now I have some good feedback to continue honing in and all that, which is good.
And on page 18, there's a list of properties, but there's no sort of title to tell what this list of properties is about.
Oh, are these the buffer zone? I thought these were the buffer zone properties.
Oh, yeah. So that is on to the next item. Based on our that kind of definition of what we talked about last meeting of like, here's the blocks that we want to include officially in the buffer. These are all the properties that I pulled that were in the buffer zone, which.
So the comment just giving it just identifying as a table or.
Oh, sure,
In text.
and this would not be in the comprehensive plan. This was for the topic of continued discussion on the buffer and architectural design and all of that. So I should have put a title, but that is for sort of this, next topic of, these are the ones that I think are within, though I think you had put together a sort of spreadsheet that showed here's.
I have a spreadsheet of It's probably going 3 blocks out. I think, what are we stopping at 12th as the western boundary?
Yes.
Okay, that'll reduce it, but when I went out about 3 blocks, including the historic district, that's about 200 properties.
Yeah, and I did
And-
not include any historic district
Yeah,
properties in
and-
this, which there's what, 60-ish?
50, around, I think it's closer to 50,
Yeah, so
Um,
together this is like
150 in the buffer, but once you cut it down to 2 blocks instead of 3, maybe it's 100 instead of 150.
Right, yes.
One of the things that I've also made, but I need to do checking on it, is I've created for the GIS a parcel ownership type of map. Doesn't have the owner's name, but it has, it basically shows which lots are attached to a single owner.
Hmm.
And part of that, there's so much else that can be connected to, for example, if someone's rezoning, they're not
Right.
rezoning a lot, they're rezoning however many lots are in that group.
Mhm.
So once I've got that further along, I'll just give you that layer. Well, one of the other things I did with that is I downloaded for each of the properties. I'm forgetting how many it is, whether it's for the 200 or not, the information that's on the assessor's website. So one of the things that could be done is one field in the GIS could be a hyperlink to that kind of information,
Right,
which you could do directly to the county. Like I said, for where it is in time, I've actually downloaded that, and that was more a matter of being able to have information on the buildings.
Mhm. Well, and I actually did start talking with the county. And they are going to be working on putting our zoning information into their system. So that way. Because right now it basically just says this is in Idaho Springs, it's not actually.
And so that parcel ownership, and it doesn't have the name of the owner, it just says these are the boundaries. That would be very useful on zoning or subdivision items
Right.
to actually have something that shows ownership boundaries.
Mhm. Right, well, and it kind of helps with. As you move forward with what Point Park, I think, made last time about the concern about subdivision and people just consolidating lots and then building a really big lot that doesn't meet bulk or mass of the rest of the block.
And one of the suggestions I have on page 21 is under other requirements. In a similar way to the existing 50% rule on square footage,
Yeah,
in Telluride, one of the requirements they had is that no new building can be more than 25% higher than the average within such and such distance. So it's basically creating a similar concept for height. And so that means height can change, but it's going to change over a long period of time, since you have to compare your house to everybody's house within a block.
Hmm.
You can't go 25% higher than what's the average.
Right, well, and that's actually is a. So, yeah, I think, looking at. Is a good suggestion already, because I think the point I wanted, that I haven't done a ton of work on. How do we actually do a code amendment to. Get at some of the concerns we brought up at the last meeting. I did briefly talk with planning commission about. Code amendment stuff related to architectural design and all that, and they were kind of. I think it was too early in the process for them to really get wrapped there.
You've got an
around it.
interesting mix of
Um,
planning that may not be as interesting.
Yeah, I think they were sort of concerned maybe about. Like, I think they're very pro, let's move forward trying to designate things, but. I think they were a little bit hesitant of. applying a standard to everyone if they're clearly not historic, maybe is a.
So that kind of actually leads into my question. I think, I love your, like looking at the architectural elements. I'm also on page 21, I think. What do we look at, the architectural elements and other requirements along with the height? But my thing is, we have this buffer zone. It is part of the design guidelines. It's been there since the 80s. No, 80, was it 8? When did they do these? 85? Very first iteration of the design guidelines?
Yeah, and it's not a guideline, it's a regulation.
It's a regulation, but okay, here's the problem. We haven't done a darn thing to enforce this regulation. So if we go out and tell those 100 to 200, depending on how you look at it, property owners, hey, you're in this buffer zone. My thing is, how do we let people know, and what are the requirements that those people are going to have to adhere to? Because that's where we're going to get pushback and a lot of screaming and hopping up and down.
Right,
Yes, it's always been there, but no, we haven't done anything about it.
or done very small amounts.
Had we been more proactive, we could have been a little more involved in that mess over on 15th in Colorado of the retail and parking lot. And because we didn't have this actively in play, so my question and concern would be, what do we expect from people that live in the buffer zone? What are your expectations going to be if the owner lives in this? Because people are going to scream, I wasn't told about this. And I would believe that because we didn't talk about it, city didn't do anything about it. I know people that bought in our historic district that were never told, hey, this is a nationally,
Right,
historically designated, and you have guidelines, they didn't know. So how do we move this from us talking about it into the public sphere where it becomes
yeah.
a living piece of how people operate within that buffer zone?
So education and outreach is sort of the main thing, because I know when we had first talked, it was like, how do we make them stronger? And then that the attorney was kind of like, well.
And because I think they're having the same worry that I am, like you say, hey, you bought here, it's always been like this, design guidelines. That's all well and good. That is not going to help when people are in the pitchfork and, the torches and pitchfork moment in City Hall or at these meetings.
Right.
I think the R1 though has a good potential because that's basically protecting yourself from your neighbors. And so as a citywide amendment, which is different than notifying it, I mean, obviously it has to be publicly noticed. But I think there might be a lot of reception in the R1 zone homeowners, because like I said, it basically is protecting you from your neighbors.
And most of the buffer zone is the R1 zone, like, there's a little bit, between 15th and 16th, 15th and 17th, that has some C1 in there.
Well, I would actually say almost none of the buffer is R1.
Really? So,
Because everything north of Colorado is R3.
okay,
And so that gets to a question of like, so like Virginia Street on like so it's like all of, between Colorado and Virginia, all of it from 13th to like Illinois is R3. And so that all is already zoned where it would allow for multifamily. So I think the concern that Park had brought up was, well, what if someone just consolidates 4 of those lots, knocks down those 4 houses and builds an apartment complex? It would have to meet buffer zone standards, but they could do an apartment. You wouldn't preserve those 4 R1 like residential homes.
And it would have to meet section 21-220.
Right, for multifamily, right?
And like I
which-
said, there's only when I was here for a year and a half, only one property ever came up
Right,
within the buffer zone.
right, exactly. Yeah, and that one you had some success at changing materials. And it's not a
Yes.
bad looking project compared to.
It's better looking than what it could have been.
So I think. So it sounds
But
like,
part of that was about is I put together again like a 1-page sheet that sort of made it easy to say, okay, yeah, here's the background on what I'm asking you to do here.
right, exactly. Well, and I think like looking at what we have now, I think what I'd like to talk about, or at least start thinking about for a future meeting is what is that low, or the easiest things to change that will have the biggest impact? Because, I would say the buffer zone, we could just start really pushing harder against developments because we do have architectural standards and say, how are you complementing these guidelines? And for multifamily, how do you actually meet our
I am
standards?
fine with pushing harder against developments. I don't think that we have pushed hard enough.
Mhm. Well, and
And
that's.
the first place that's gonna come to a head could be on the school property.
Oh, it's
Because-
absolutely.
Cause that's a huge multifamily project.
Right, and I think before it even got to talk about architecture, city council is not going to waive parking requirements.
Oh,
So
no.
that's going to be the big hurdle for them. to
And
get
they
before.
also, just from a code, they have to have 50% of that has to be open space. Like, they've got a lot of challenge, they wanna put, I think, 61.
Well, the problem with that one is it is zone commercial, which has a lower open space.
What is it now?
I think it's only 10%.
Oh, God, parking is what's going to,
Parking is going to be the big one because architecture, they could design a building that they have in-house architects. I'm actually not worried about it. Other than the fact that that section 21-220 strong enough for us as a city to be able to say, hey, this doesn't meet this.
And as a starting point, the design that was in the council packet is not bad looking. In other words, it's better than a lot of development you would see.
it's not appropriate though,
No,
for
it's
a
different.
buffer
That's-
zone to the historical district of this
Yeah,
city.
that's a different question.
Yeah,
Is it sort of like if you were to put it anywhere, it's above average. But not if you're talking about a historic district.
well, when we met with him, we talked to him and I said, look, I'm gonna tell you point blank, you're the gateway to our historic district. This will not cut it architecturally.
Right.
And he's like, we'll do whatever we need to do. I'm like, okay, I'm letting you know, this is what you're going to need to do. We have design
Yeah.
guidelines, you're in the buffer zone, you're going to need, then I was like, okay, we gotta make our buffer zone a little more laid out as to what we expect from the buffer zone.
Mhm. Well, and I do think, I think probably that development as shown could meet most of the architectural elements talked about in our multifamily and commercial architecture requirements that aren't buffer zone. Buffer zone makes it different, but that's where we had talked and said, even with, obviously laying out, this is what we'd like to see in the buffer zone, I think is helpful because then that gives him a guide and he can
I
say,
think we need to do that.
so maybe that is step one, even before.
Like, if you're gonna build in the buffer zone, you need to look at a building style that is cohesive or complementary to our period of significance, which is 1880 to 1920. Here are the styles, looking at Michael's design sheet, his architectural design sheet. Here are the styles, looking at that survey. Here are the styles that you will see in this town. Here's what you get to choose from.
Right, and yeah, it's, we might not get 100% of the way there to this is a perfect example of a modern Victorian. House,
I don't know
but-
if you have them, but when Alan Tiefenbach was our city planner, that football field was all the people that are up in Georgetown, that crazy guy, 6'5" and never wore shoes. He was really interested. You might remember him.
You have to be a little more specific.
Oh, no, he did some talks at the school that I came to. This would be 2013 through 2016.
Hmm.
And Alan was like, look, my goal is that you have a late Victorian, maybe Edwardian, maybe a little Gothic thrown in there. I liked that idea where he expected if you were going to develop in this town, you needed to develop within our period of significance. And there was definitely leeway and some elasticity, but it needed to look like it fit.
Now, one other thing, did you ever see the original design for the clinic? Because it went through, this is the third version. The best design was the first one.
The best design
And
was
the
the
second
first
one wasn't as good, and the third one.
This one
was
is
not
not,
as good as
this
the
is like
second
Breckenridge. This is this is Mountain Town. I
Yeah.
hate it.
one. That was, it was that style that they were doing for the clinic originally, and it was much clearer. It was a much more obvious style than what's there today.
I
They
don't know
sort
why
of
we backed
mushed
off
things
on
out.
that, like, I was not involved or did
Yeah.
not follow a lot of the discussions around that one. But I was really sad because I actually liked Alan's vision where if you come in and build in this town, you're gonna respect the history of this town, the end.
Right, yeah, and I think that's creating guides and like educational tools of like, this is what we want to see without changing the code. Seems
Carmen would like to
easier.
see that.
It's a lot easier to do than, yeah, trying to figure out, okay, what do we actually change in the code to force it?
And the elderly, I think it's elderly housing, it's on Minor to the east
over here?
here.
Yeah, the
Mitchell
Mitchell
White?
White
Yes.
yellow building.
That's a very good example of something that was well-meaning, but not well-designed. In other
It
words,
almost gets, it almost gets.
there's sort of suggestions of historic,
I would
but
like
it's not
some
a
more.
good, but it's not a good design.
No,
Mm,
but I think if we find ways, here are our guidelines, here's the design guidelines. Like, I have never forgotten Alan talking about that, and I have never, ever fallen out of disagreement, and fallen out of agreement with that, because I feel like we are a Victorian town. We're late Victorian, but we are a Victorian town, and if you look at the styles, most of these were prevalent, you know. 1880, even 1870, although a lot of our 1870s are gone. Like 1880s to 1920, that's when most of our town was built.
Right, yeah, I think that is a good point, like, this is what's important to us. How are you meeting this? Like, how are you,
So how can we do that without having Carmen go, nope? Because, you know,
well, I think
Go ahead.
strongly encouraging anything is legal.
then let's strongly encourage.
Well, part of the way of doing it is like the sheet that I put together is what you do is when they first come in, you show them the good example and say,
Right,
yes, these are the guidelines we have. Here's what was produced. And the house across the street is just a very good example because the owner has done so much to maintain that house. And so to look for examples for other buildings where, okay, are there other examples? There's 4 commercial styles in the historic district. And then there are the 2 houses, which I think are both national folk. So it's not a matter of doing a lot of research to say, okay, what can we identify as because that chart, that page that I made, basically, those are the characteristics. That's what the National Park Service looks at is, have you protected the aspects of integrity?
right,
Maybe
yeah.
that's the way to head to it, like, you know, here's our
Right.
buffer zone, this is our expectation of the buffer zone.
Well, and you could almost make it citywide, because I think we got in with the Carlson potential developer early enough that he knows now that what we're sort of expecting historically, even though we haven't given him specific forms. I've said like, these are the guidelines, look them, have your architects look them over. And so there's probably going to be some percentage of people who buy a lot and say, my vision is this, and I'm not willing to budge. But I would guess normally people get really up in arms when they don't know what they want, and then when we say, hey, you have to do it all over.
So that may also require, talking to some of the people that sell real estate in this area about,
Right.
you know, because, but then they don't disclose meth houses, they didn't disclose historic district. Some of them
Sure.
are not as ethically upfront with the challenges of living here
Mhm.
as they should be.
Well, but most of the properties in the buffer are either single family homes that probably will stay single family homes. Except for the ones that are zoned commercial, and so people who are buying them a commercial property, even if it's a home on it, they're saying, well, we're gonna be commercial, at least we can go to them and say, great. Here's how all of our commercial looks, notwithstanding gas stations.
One of the things,
But see, if we could designate that one gas station,
Yeah, that's incredible.
if we could get the Sinclair to come in and be a local.
One of the things in one of the places I worked was that annually we had a lunch meeting for the building contractors. basically we bought them a box lunch with a sandwich in it. But we would do that once a year. Now, that, by the time I left, they had stopped doing that. And then there was also an attempt at an annual meeting with the realtors. And again, the incentive was, well, for the realtors, I think there's the additional incentive now, because I think they have to have continuing education credits. And maybe that's something that might qualify for continuing education, since they have to do that anyway.
Right, so kind of design something where it says, hey, if you come in and we talk at you for a couple hours about architectural design and history of the town and all that.
You get food and a credit.
Right, that's a good idea, and then I suppose if there's just a property owner who wants to come in and learn.
But I think the idea, I think our focus needs to be sort of twofold in that we have to create, sorry, Dylan, the guides that we can give to people, so they have that information, or we have to create a list of here's where you go to look for this, this, and this.
Yeah,
So that people have access to that, and then we also go out and manage expectations and, present education.
right, well, Mike has given me a huge head start, because if I can now just use this as the template, I guess.
I like it,
For
Mike, I think
everything
that's
else,
great.
then we can, hone in as needed, but. Like if I gave this to someone who was gonna buy a house that looked like this and said, here's are the things that we care about. Like now at least they can look and say, oh, okay, I need to maintain. This or that, and look into it a little bit more. Now they have the history and they're empowered to.
That's also something you could give to the realtors. Here's what you need to include in your packet for houses that are selling in this.
Oh, that's a good idea. That's a really good idea.
And then I can start mentioning to people who call, because I do often get people calling saying, hey, I'm looking at potentially buying property here, and I can say, oh, well. Are you interested in the history of it? If so, I'll happily send you this form over.
I also was going to tell you, I like your applying for a local historic site designation. I was reading that, like, if I was somebody that didn't know anything, this would walk me through what I needed, and I would no longer feel
Oh, yeah. that-
completely in the dark. Yeah, your template.
That was what I was trying to start getting at, is like, we can hand that to people along with some information about their building. Help get people started. Shannon had given me a few comments on it about some other resources and things that might be
I
helpful.
think if we follow along with the idea of Idaho Springs, of where stories live, everybody has a story.
And that's a very good tagline.
Well, but
It's about telling
it's
stories.
about telling stories, but it also allows for us, from a city perspective, to encourage people. Yeah, sure, your house is like a two bedroom, one bath. It's little and tiny and tucked up on, High Street, but it has a story.
Yeah, and encouraging, if people can be encouraged to learn their stories and then tell them, then they're going to take a lot more ownership on
Yes.
maintaining those stories.
Because that's where I think the hard part is, like what Patty said about people that have lived here, they're like, yeah, I know, Granny lived here. I got the house when she passed, and that's that. Whereas, it's no big deal because they've lived with it. But that may also reinvigorate a little pride in, well, actually, your granny was one of the owners of the bank in Idaho Springs. This is a big deal. Women weren't usually owners.
And it's never really your house until you move out, because it's always referenced by who was the previous owner.
Mhm.
That's true. It is funny how many buildings in town are still referenced by what it used to be in town rather than what it is now.
Like the Hatchet Building, or the Majestic, or the Trevathan Building.
Right.
Those are what we call them.
Right, and say, well, a different example that now no longer exists is the Get Gas, which was not even the thing it was called when it was actually in
Oh, I know,
operation.
but the
Sunshine Cafe.
the sadness over the Get Gas, like,
Yeah.
what was that,
and
150 comments in our social media?
It was like a non-historic building that has been vacant for what, 5 years?
Or
Oh,
more,
longer than that.
longer than that.
People are upset that the city's turning a building that was vacant for 7 or 8 years.
And falling
into
apart.
parking.
And falling into the creek. Let's just be honest, that thing was falling in the creek.
Yeah, you just can't win when it comes to Facebook.
No.
No, but Facebook is really good for, like, I look at it as a way to see the temperature.
Hmm.
You know, see what people are hot about, see what they do not care about.
That's true. It's funny how many things are posted that people just get no comments whatsoever. It's like, I'm not very engaging, I guess. Well, I think I can easily start working on, like the guide type stuff. That's a lot easier than, trying to wrap.
No, I really like the idea of the guide, and we already have the buffer zone in place. So if we say, we expect you to be complementary
Mhm.
with our historic district, which is a period of significance from 1880 to 1920. Complementary is a very elastic word.
Mhm.
And by developing these sheets based on architectural style, we're basically telling them, okay, this is what that section of the code means. These are the characteristics.
And if you come to us and say, I'm gonna do the characteristics of this, we're gonna be like, oh, all right.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah, in other words, like, there are four commercial styles. In other words, you're giving people four options.
And it's the pathway to yes.
Yeah, right, exactly. Yeah, pathway to yes. Well, and I like the idea, I will say, of that height limit thing in the residential district.
Well, Erica made a really good point when she was showing, when we were looking at that block of 13. And you could see that one house that got real tall and skinny.
It's right back, should be right back.
Does that help you with the comprehensive plan, Dylan?
Yes, and it helps me with the other section that we were supposed to talk about now. So I think unless anyone wants to talk about anything else, I'm happy to.
Do we have anything else under old business, anyone? Do we have anything under new business? I presented my new business at the end, so please be thinking about that.
And I will be working on all of this.
When will we
They-
know about the grant? Once you put it in?
Um,
What's their timeline?
I would guess that we will know around the end of the year.
Yeah.
Okay,
It's either late December or.
Yeah, it says anticipated is on January 5th, so that gives them a couple months. So that gives us a good timeline. And again, I think business community promotions boards can't, they're like, we will try to make this happen, even if it's slower without the grant money. If we get the grant money, we can build out something really pretty cool, pretty quick, but otherwise I still want to.
And unless it's changed. Once they say, yes, you've been approved, but it takes the state attorney about a month to review it.
Yeah, they had said that we probably wouldn't be able to really execute anything until sometime in February at the earliest, so. That might push the timeline a little, but. It'd be a fun little project. And I don't think the business board is too concerned about like highlighting preservation success stories, but I'm very interested in doing that as part of the tour because I think there's more people than you'd expect to. Would like to see the transformation of the building over the years. And it's not really highlighted on your typical tour, so. We'll see. And yeah, I think maybe we'll have a work session in November at least to maybe chat with the potential local designation, but otherwise I might play it by ear on how much I can get done in the next month or so.
okay,
That works for everyone.
it does. I really appreciate you taking this on. I know you have a lot going on, but I think this is important and I'm actually very worried. I'm worried. I am concerned about what happens with that development on Carlson, because if that developer does not buy it, they have a closing date of sometime next year. It's still gonna go to some sort of housing developer. That's really, who can afford to do that, and I don't know about, I don't know, I have mixed feelings about the stuff that was presented to us by the potential buyer, so I see that as our first push-pull battle
Right,
for maintaining the integrity of the historic district.
yeah.
Have they gotten tax credits, have they said?
No, they have an application in with Chaffa at the moment, and they have which is like state financing basically, but for low income housing tax credits, they have their interview with them or. I guess it's next week,
And are they seeking federal tax credits?
I think so. Yeah, so if they get it, then it would be an average area median income of about 50%. So it would achieve
So,
Well, clear
median
housing.
income according to, HUD, in this area is like 71.2.
That's,
Well,
who the hell they talk to?
Well, no, but that's because they roll us in with, Adams County, in Denver. Our actually, Idaho Springs is 51.4. But, the HUD is 71.2, so 50% of that would be like 35,000. That's actually decent.
yeah, it's, the thing I think that's important to note is if we can, 50% would be like, well, the lower end, because it's an average, like everything below 50% would be units for under $1,000 a month, which actually would move the
Which
needle.
would be great.
So in that sense, it's kind of like,
Yes, but he's gotta make it look pretty because we already got 3 gas stations on that corner and it's an ugly entrance to
right.
the downtown Idaho
architecture is very
Springs, so
important. The
still
question.
sad for him.
The question I think that will make or break it from a city standpoint is parking. Architecture, I think they can get there. Because they have in-house architects who can design it. The materials might not be perfect, but they can make it look like it's.
Because they're right next to the fire hose house
In
and the library.
And they're, from looking at the drawings, they are spending money on design, so it's a matter of getting them to rearrange the money they're spending on making it look better.
Right. Right.
I
And
don't think they can do underground parking there either, can they?
I think it would make it far too expensive for.
No, I just
at the water table.
But
No, I think
also-
it's the water table. I don't think they can go down deep enough for that. They're still too close to the creek.
Maybe, yeah, and I mean, part of it also would come down to what can the city offer? Like for true affordable housing that's under $1,000 a month. What is city council willing to give as a carrot in order to get them to spend
I'm not
more?
losing 50% of the parking spaces. That ain't happening.
Right, but if
That is
it's,
a pipe dream.
you know, I mean, this is totally irrelevant to HPC, but like if you said, okay, we'll waive all anything the city gets from it, impact fees, tap fees, like plan investment fees. Those, so if you said that, but you have to do underground parking, that might make it pencil. You know, those are the sort of conversations you have.
Yeah, if I'm gonna give, you need to get, you need to also give, like, if I hand over money from that the city's gonna get, if I vote for that, something needs to come back across the table.
Right. Well, and it's like I talked about the senior housing project. If we get a developer who wants to build it and they say, well, we can do it, but we have a $700,000 shortfall, I would say we should just donate the land to them. But I don't know if that's the thing.
Problem is the land, well, what, you know, the land is deed restricted. So they couldn't, like, that land was sold to us under deed restriction. We can't sell it. And just, we're not gonna deed
It would
restrict
still be
anymore.
deed restricted, yeah,
Yes.
but you could do a long-term lease or whatever. Anyway, I think there has to be some level of compromise on certain elements, but it shouldn't be the architecture.
No. And it cannot be the parking. Like, it just can't. That is a wreck down there anyway. That would just make it worse.
Right. But anyway.
Is there anything else, old or new business for this work session that we need to cover? All right, then